Darrell, how's it going today?
Good, man. Good to see you.
You as well. And I'm looking forward to today's chat because I know you so well. And I know this is going to go to a place that I'm not familiar with in regards to your story. And for me, I'm already excited. But let's just level set here. Can you introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Yeah, I'm Darrell Vesterfelt, founder, entrepreneur. I have started several companies, currently own a handful. I've been in the creator economy space since before that was even a term, since about 2004. My entire kind of professional career has existed in that space a little bit. So I've worked at companies like ConvertKit in the past, and I've also worked with many high influence pro athletes, authors, podcasters, bloggers, whatever we want to call the medium of the time, specifically around how to monetize their audience. So I've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. You started the whole trend here with the creator economy, so I dig
I
that.
don't think I started
And
it.
well, either way, you're very instrumental
Yeah.
in the growth. But how are things going these days, like overall?
Good, man. My life's never been better. What I love about work and life is that everything's so integrated. So I feel like I have deeper friendships than I've ever had before. Work has been challenging and fun and rewarding like never before. And it's a fun game to play. I think it's the most fun game to play is how to improve your life and yourself and your relationships and your business. And so I just view all of it kind of as an infinite game. And the game is really fun right now. There's lots of challenging parts of it. There's lots of frustrating parts of it. That's part of the game, but it wouldn't be fun. I think maybe Warren Buffett said it once, like, if you just hit a golf ball and it went to the hole every single time you hit it, it just wouldn't be fun. Like, part of the fun is the contrast between the roughs and the bunkers and also the sweet shots that you just hit down the middle of the fairway. And so I'm just having fun playing the game right now. Not everything is perfect, but I'm having a lot of fun playing the game. More fun than ever, actually.
Yeah, I love that quote. I'm gonna borrow that one from you. But okay, so now we're gonna go off this cliff
Yeah.
where you mentioned some of the rough parts of your journey,
Yeah.
and that's what we want to focus on today. Not in a way to exploit you or just to be amazed at your comeback, but in a way that motivates other people to do the same if they're pushing through some tough challenges. So you're up. What is the most challenging part of your life, either personally or professionally, that you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah. So I want to talk about part of my career 4 years ago. That is I haven't actually talked a lot about it with I've never talked about it publicly. And even you and I have been friends for a couple of years now, and I haven't even talked to you about it before right now. But it's around the week that my daughter was born, and kind of the subsequent months after that. At the time, I had two companies. We were actually splitting out into two different companies, and one of the companies that was splitting out, I brought in a co-founder, and then investors, and it was the first time I ever had investors in a company of mine before. And I just wasn't ready, man. I was really probably mentally ready for it. Like I could do all of the things, but emotionally became a pretty challenging point. So the company went from 0 to $1 million of revenue in the first 12 months, which was really great for, kind of a lean startup, like small investment, just small company. It did really well, really quickly. But the problem was I was spread way too thin across too many different things. And I also just wasn't mentally prepared for how hard being a dad for the first time was going to be. So there came a moment that I'm not proud of this at all, but there came a moment where we had to. My daughter was breech, and so we had to do a scheduled C-section, and I was so far behind on projects that were supposed to be launching that I was like asking Claire to push back the C-section, the scheduled C-section, so I could have another day or two before before Collins came, my daughter came. And I missed deadlines with these big projects. Lots of money was invested in them. I just like came to a breaking point a little bit. I didn't get the things done I needed to get done. They weren't done to the quality that I wanted them. I had frustrated partners at work. I had frustrated partner at home. I wasn't able to be present, and it just kind of all hit in this break point. On top of it, like first time ever having a baby, no sleep, and something like, you know, I didn't ever think I was going to be a dad. This was something that was kind of a surprise for us, and it was a really great surprise in the end. But I was also working through this like complete shift of my identity, of like I thought I was going to be this person forever, and now all of a sudden I'm this person, and there was a loss. And I don't think that anybody ever told me that there was a loss that you experience when you become a parent, because everybody's focused on all the positive sides of it. And so everybody's like, oh, it's so amazing, you're going to love your child so much, and positive, 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 positive. And nobody ever gave me the freedom to say it's okay to be sad that who you used to be is gone now. And so I was dealing with the guilt of feeling that it's like, I love my daughter, but I'm also really sad that who I used to be is gone. And there's a lot of grief around that. So I missed deadlines. Clients were pissed off at me. My partners were pissed off at me. At home, I was stressed out and not being a present dad and partner. And then I'm grieving really heavily. And I was asked to leave the company that I started, fired basically, and asked to leave the company that I started, just so that those partners could save face with the clients that I had completely made huge mistakes on. And in the moment, it felt like these were potential like large influential clients. They were large influential partners and investors, and I had just maybe ruined my career. It's kind of how I felt in the moment. And I was just very, very scared. And it was about a 6-month, very, very dark period of my life where I was having a hard time being a new dad. I just lost a business that I basically worked for free for a whole year on, trying to bootstrap this company, even though we had a small investment amount. I was working for way under market. I was working for barely anything. And so I just lost all this time, all this effort, and on top of it, embarrassed in front of really influential clients, and probably burned some bridges that really sucked. So just a really, really dark and hard time. There's more to go into maybe, but that's kind of the 30,000-foot view of that time. Probably lasted 6 months to a year, where we're just kind of a really, really dark period where I wasn't sure what career would look like after that, because it just felt like I might have ruined it all.
Yeah, I think on my end, I had a somewhat similar experience when my first kid was born. I just became an entrepreneur, and I had no idea what I was doing whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I had a new business and a new kid, and I was so stressed out and so worried about the future that I was not present. I was physically present. I was there every day, but I was just zoned out. And to this day, I'll look at pictures of my daughter from back then, and I don't remember those moments. And there's a lot of guilt around that as well. So I understand what you're saying, and it's interesting you bring up the C-section, the scheduled C-section. One of my friends, his baby's mother lives in a different country, and she was due, let's pretend it's like the 15th, but he had to leave the 10th, and he paid the doctor more money to have the baby come out earlier.
Oh, wow.
And luckily, everything worked out okay. But I'm saying this to let you realize that you're not the only guy who's felt that way. I felt that way too, by the way, right? So I think that's the benefit of talking about these things, and realize we're not the only ones that are going through this.
It's good. I had a friend who felt the same kind of way. He's like, I don't know how to talk about this, but I feel really bad. I don't even know if I like my kid. Like, I'm feeling really guilty. I'm having a lot of resentment. Is this real? And I was like, yeah, it actually is really real. Like, it's really okay to grieve the fact that who you thought you were going to be, or maybe who you wanted to be, like, it's a moment where it's like you see this kid and it's like, oh, my responsibilities have completely changed. My priorities have completely changed. Who I thought I was going to be is different. And it's okay to grieve that. It's okay to feel that sadness. People just don't talk about it a lot. And I think it's key, because I don't think I'm the only dad who's ever felt that, of like, well, it's over. It's different now. And I think that the guilt that you feel puts you into isolation, which just makes it 10 times worse.
Yeah. And I'll say this. I mean, that feeling doesn't necessarily go away because I have 4 kids, they're between 2 and 8 years old. There's still times to this day where I'm like, I could get so much done if I wasn't like arguing over what you're watching on TV right now or making your lunch or things like that. So to your point, the more that we share, I think the more we realize these are normal behaviors and normal feelings to have. But what I want to do is I want to understand what happened, because you said it took you about 6 to 12 months to get back in the swing of things. So I want to know what was happening during those 6 to 12 months, first of all. And then what was the spark that made you feel like, okay, I'm back?
Yeah, honestly, this is not a good strategy. It's just an honest thing that happened is I just held my breath for a long time to see what the fallout was going to be. I hid a lot. And I don't think those are necessarily good strategies, but I think that's what prolonged maybe that period of time for me is I was so embarrassed that I had failed in front of these people, like my partners who, again, are super influential and my clients who are super influential, that I just hid. I tried to avoid talking to anybody. I tried to avoid thinking about it, hoping that if I just closed my eyes and held my breath, that it would, like, the storm would pass a little bit. And then I think part of the strategy in my mind, again, I'm not recommending this strategy, was to see if there was going to be another shoe that dropped that I wasn't aware of. And so I kept holding my breath, hoping that another shoe wouldn't drop. And I think if I were to do it over again, and I think what ended up taking me out of it is just leaning into it more and owning it. And I think if I would have been able to be more honest with myself, I probably would have been able to be more honest with the people around me and just say, hey, I feel incredibly guilty that this happened. I know that I let you down. I'm really sorry. I think if I would have just said that to people instead of keep trying to make it work, I would have been in a lot better place. And so at some point, like through lots of conversations with therapists and other things, it came to a point where deciding like which of those relationships it made sense to do some of that repair, and then begin doing that repair a little bit with myself too, and just let myself off the hook a little bit, give myself grace that a mistake, even if a mistake that large is not going to be the end of me or my career, was really key. And so there's just a lot of work and a lot of time to kind of get through the holding the breath, closing my eyes, hoping that nothing bad happens, sort of thing. And then beginning to let myself off the hook and then beginning to make repairs where it made sense.
Yeah. I have a statement and then a question. My statement is, after I got fired from working at Facebook, I hid too.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go out in public just in case I saw some of my coworkers, because some of them live in my neighborhood, and I was so afraid of bumping into them and them saying, "Hey, I didn't see you at lunch today," or whatever, something like that. And I thought it was the end of the world. Like I thought it was the end of the world. Like because I had this job that was so sought after and it was so amazing, and like my parents were all proud of me and all this stuff, and I lost it, and I didn't even tell them I got laid off. And that's something I do regret to an extent, because my father died about 7 months after I got laid off. And up until the day he died, he still thought I worked there, right? Like, he was saying that, like, in the hospital bed. And I'm like, shit, I got to tell this guy something, and I didn't. So I almost feel, I don't want to say silly, but it's like, it was very foolish of me to have that thought that someone like you or I would get stopped by one thing in our life and we would never rebound. But when you're in it, gosh, it's so hard to see that.
It's so hard. And I think I even have grace for myself in that moment where it's like, that's all that I knew to do. Like, if I'm in that position again, which I hope I never am, I think I would do it differently. I think I would do it differently now. But I think I needed to go through that and to be even honest with the pain that caused me, and then maybe like making the problem worse to the people around me, to learn. How would I have known? That was the best strategy that I could come up with at that time, is to hide. And it's like, that's okay. That's okay. It's like, I think sometimes we hold ourselves to impossible or ridiculous standards because we have hindsight into something. At the time, it was the best that I could do. The best that I could do when my daughter was born is to not answer phone calls from my partners for 10 days, to not answer emails, to not let people know where I was at on things. And guess what? In hindsight, that's a really bad strategy. But at the time, like, that's all that I could do. And so I can give myself a little bit of grace. I'm ashamed a little bit, and that's okay. Shame's not bad, but I'm ashamed at how I behaved now that I have like, I'm out of that fight or flight survival mode a little bit. I can look back and be like, that didn't feel good to me either, to respond to people that way. It didn't feel good to me to hide. I would do it differently, but it's okay. I had to probably do it badly to know how to do it better. And I think that's okay. I have a little bit of grace for myself going through that.
I'm going to have a statement and then another question here. Actually, it's going to be two questions. One is, do you feel like you're overly accountable to your partners now after going through that experience where you let them down? Do you feel like you really have to just over deliver in order to make up for it? And I'm asking you because I feel that way after my experiences.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you feel the same way too. Like, my goal now is always to be the best partner that anyone works with, because I know what it's like to be the shittiest person that anyone's worked with. So I'm curious if you feel the same way as well.
I actually don't think that maybe I did for a while. I felt this extreme pressure too. I think where I land now is, I just need to do what I know I need to do. So I don't try to go above and beyond, and I don't do less either. So it's like, I just know that if I do what I know I'm supposed to do, that's enough. Right. And so I just hold myself accountable to that. So if I have a thought of something I know I'm supposed to do, or if I have a conviction, or there's something inside of me where I know I'm supposed to do it, I do it. And I think the idea of going over, like those overreactions, like the hiding is an overreaction in one direction, or the like going over in reaction to prove myself, I think they're the same wrong on the different ends of the spectrum. Right. And so I think what I've learned over time is the urge to hide or to try to do everything that I like, try to prove that I can do everything even when I can't do it. That's just as wrong as like going above and beyond to prove myself. I think it's like the same spectrum, the same problem, just at different ends of the spectrum. And so for me, it's like, hey, no more, no less. Just do exactly what I know I'm supposed to do. And then I also let myself off the hook and I don't just feel guilty all the time. Because it sucked feeling guilty all the time, man, where it's like, all right, I suck as a partner. I suck as a human. And so I've got to go above and beyond to prove that I'm enough because I'm just not enough default. That's too much pressure to hold where I like have this default, I'm not enough and I've got to go above and beyond. So I just think I'm enough. I think I'm a good partner. I know my skill and my worth now. So just do exactly what I know. No more, no less. And that's exactly what I think my partners expect from me. So, and then I think the second thing is feedback. I've learned to love feedback now. And how you respond to feedback goes a long way in partnerships, not just at work, but at home too. That when a partner comes to me and gives me feedback, I just want to acknowledge the fact that they're experiencing what they're telling me they're experiencing. And I think a lot of times people go immediately into like telling a story or justifying the behavior or whatever else. And I've just learned, man, can I just acknowledge, hey, I'm sorry that you're feeling that way. If I were in your shoes, I would probably feel the same way. It makes a lot of sense to me. Maybe here's some context so you understand where my mind's at. How can we make this better in the future? And I've learned just like being really good at like receiving feedback and then replying to feedback goes a long, long way. Because nobody's perfect. So like, I'm not perfect, Terry. So I don't have an expectation that you're going to be perfect. But I think we think people have that expectation of us, and it's just not true.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is I still, I'm triggered by negative feedback, even though the majority of feedback I get is wonderful.
Yeah.
It takes me back to that place who I was like, 8-10 years ago, who was getting horrible feedback all the time because I was screwing up near the end. And I'm still working through that. I'm not done with that.
Yeah. I'd be curious to know what the belief is that causes that to be a trigger, because there has to be some belief about yourself that you're afraid is true when that feedback comes through. And I think that's the work I'm continuing to do in myself too is, like if I have a partner who's upset, like, man, I go into like my guts turn into a knot and I get hyperactive. I bet my heartbeat raises. Like it's a real thing that's a trigger for me too. But I think there's some belief I have about myself that I'm afraid is true, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm afraid that they think I'm a piece of shit too. And if they think it, then it must be true. And I think I've just gotten to a place, again, through tons of therapy, which is the best investment I've ever made, of just being like, I don't actually believe I'm a piece of shit anymore. Like, do I do shitty things sometimes? Yep. Do I make mistakes sometimes? Yep. But when somebody thinks I'm a piece of shit, man, it just means so much more about them than it does about me. And I've heard people say that 100 times, and it meant nothing to me until it clicked for me, and then I understood exactly what they were saying. And so I'm curious. I'd be curious for myself and for you, like, what is the belief that you're afraid is true when somebody gives you that negative feedback, and what kind of things can we do to change that belief that you have about it? And I think that's probably maybe the work that all of us are supposed to do, maybe not just specific to you, but.
Yeah, one thing, first of all, that comes to mind is this quote. I can't remember where I heard it, but it was, you're not perfect, but you're not your mistakes.
Yeah.
And I try to keep that in mind. So it's just a fear of backsliding to the person I was before, because I've had to fight really hard to build myself back up, both mentally, physically, and professionally. So that's what it is. It's a fear. And
here's something I think about a lot. How can you be something that you're not? Like, your state of being is who you are, right? I think about this so often, because a lot of times I work in marketing a lot, and a lot of times people are afraid to be like that sleazy marketing guy. And I'm like, but are you that sleazy marketing guy? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, well, then how can you be that if you're not that? And it's like, who you are defines how you show up, right? So I think a lot of it's really important. And this is maybe a lot of the work that I've done manifesting in this conversation a bit. I used to be afraid that I was a piece of shit. So when my partners thought I was a piece of shit, I was like, see, confirmation, check mark, I am that, right? But I think what I've begun to learn is that just because I've done a shitty thing does not make me a piece of shit, right? And I think that that is a lot of work to get to that point. Is I've done a shitty thing. I've hurt people. I've made mistakes. I am not a shitty person. I am a person who's made a mistake and has hurt people. Even the reframe of how you say that is so freaking key, because if we start having identity is huge. Like James Clear talks about, like, habits, like how important identity is in the habits that you have. If the identity, the subversive or like subconscious identity I have about myself is that I'm a piece of shit, as soon as negative feedback comes to me, I'm like, see, I am. Told you so. If my underlying or subconscious belief about myself is that I'm a good person who is maybe limited, and I think this is like the ego continuum a little bit, right? And I think it's like people who have a hard time taking feedback, I also think they believe the good press about themselves a little bit too much too. It's the same ego continuum a little bit of like, hey, actually, you know, one of the most freeing things I've done in the last 5 years of my life is to admit that the success I had at ConvertKit probably would have happened if I was there or not. Right? For a long time, I was like, people were like patting me on the back of like, oh my gosh, you were the director of growth there. I can't believe it. And it's like, I was believing it. Like, yeah, see how awesome I am? Like, da, 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 da. That's the same continuum of like, you're a piece of shit. And it's like, no, actually ConvertKit was a really great product. Nathan built a really great product. It also was hitting kind of like a zeitgeist at a specific time. I happened to join the team at the right time. And also I'm a talented marketer. So it's like, it doesn't have to be all in. And I feel like when you can live in that mid zone of like not believing the shit part of the story and not believing the hype part of the story, you kind of get out of that ego continuum a little bit, and there's just a bit of honesty. But then you can have honest like assessment of who you are. Your identity can become a little bit more true and real. Like, I am a really good marketer. That is a part of my identity. I'm a great marketer. And also I picked a great team to join at the right time, right? And that allows me to have the identity of like, if somebody came to me and it's like, hey, you're like, everything you touch turns to gold. It's like, yeah, it would feel really easy to believe that story. Or if somebody came to me and be like, you fucked up and you like potentially drove this company in the ground and you disappointed lots of partners and clients. It's like, yeah, no, I made a mistake and it really hurt some people. And you kind of shave the edges off of that. And I think the ego likes to go to the extremes of like, you're a piece of shit, and see, you made a mistake, so you must be a piece of shit. Or, hey, you're really awesome and look at how really awesome you are. And the ego loves to live in the extreme of those things. But I think the reality is a little bit more in the middle. And when we can get outside of that ego a little bit, I think the identity becomes a little bit more real. So then I make a mistake and somebody's like, oh, you're a piece of shit. And it's like, no, I'm not a piece of shit. I'm sorry that you think that. You must also live in those extremes. Your ego must also be pulling you into those extremes. And you must believe that about yourself, which is why you're projecting it on me. I made a mistake. And I might have done a really shitty thing. I made a mistake. That's not a part of my identity. Or if somebody comes to me and is like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. It's like, no, like I'm good at what I do. I'm not like what you're kind of building me up to be. But I think it's actually the same continuum. Again, the same spectrum of ego kind of pulling you into the extremes of either direction. And the work I think to do is to like really have an identity and believe that, right? And I think that takes work to do, like with therapy and conversations. And I also think it is done in the mix of friends who are also committed to like not being egocentric people. And I think it happens inside of relationship in those ways, like with people you work with and your friends and relationships with professionals like therapists. So sorry, that was like a wide ranging trying to pull all that together, but I hope that makes sense.
No, I can tell you've invested a lot into therapy because you're very self-actualized and very clear on who you are. So I can appreciate that. I do have another question though, because you said you hid, from your partners and from investors and everything, but you can't hide from your wife. So what was that like between when you got let go from this company and when things started getting better? Like, did you turn into super dad? Were you like, I don't want to get out of bed in the morning, or like what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I did is I hid from work and I became present at home.
Nice.
And again, it was like, not that being present at home is wrong, and but I think like I was doing the thing where I was going to extremes, right? Mm-hmm. Where it was like this thing hit me and I was like, being a dad is more important than work right now. Work can wait. People are calling me. I mean, my phone has like 4 missed calls from the same person, or many emails like, are you okay? Are things okay? Are you, like, we're actually worried about you at this point. So I think like part of the hiding was just to be present at home there. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that I was emotionally present. I don't think I was processing this with Claire. Like I was physically present. And I was like, doing feedings in the middle of the night. I was doing the things I was supposed to do. Whereas at work, I wasn't even doing the responsibilities, but I don't know that I was emotionally present with her. I don't think I was processing with her. I'd have to ask her. I'm a little bit blacked out of this part of it. Like, did she know how hard it was at work and how hard things were going on? Was I being completely transparent with her about everything that was happening there too? I don't remember. So I think I was hiding, maybe just emotionally more than physically. And I don't know that I was being honest with myself, so it probably would be pretty impossible to be honest with other people around me. So,
yeah, I'm glad we're digging in on this because, again, I think a lot of our listeners are going through something, and there are people there that will support them and show empathy. But if you're not transparent and authentic and open about it, then you can't even get that support. So I just want to encourage anyone listening, like, hey, if you're going through it, don't go through it by yourself. It's going to be worse the more that you try to hide this.
And literally just find one person. And it doesn't have to be who it's supposed to be either. Like, I think there's like this intuitive part of us too that I remember that the person that I did end up talking to about this first was a friend of mine who I'd just known for years. And I was like, I just need to talk. And so it wasn't maybe the right person to talk to, but it was like, just tell somebody. Just one person. Mm-hmm. It will give you the confidence to begin telling more. I think just starting small, like just tell somebody. Or I have this rubber duck that sits behind me all the time.
Yeah.
Just tell the rubber duck. Like, that's
you tell the rubber duck, dude?
Just tell the rubber duck, like talk to something. If it can't be someone, then talk to something, and then, progress from something to someone. Tell someone.
Maybe talk to Chat GPT if that works.
Not a bad idea.
So I'm going to ask you one more question. This is going to be a difficult one because I don't know how I would answer it right now. But I'm wondering if you feel comfortable sharing one of your favorite quotes. And if you want to give some context around why it's one of your favorite quotes, that would be great. But I love a good quote. So I'm wondering if you have something for us here.
Yeah, you'll actually know this quote. But my favorite quote, it's Carl Jung. Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our lives and we'll call it fate. I think I did that justice. I think that was basically it. And I think that a lot of what we're talking about here is like subconsciously I believed I was a piece of shit. and it ruled my life. So every time negative feedback came, I believed it, right? And so I think until we can like stare down the subconscious, it's going to rule our lives. We're going to call it fate. We're going to think it's a mistake, or sorry, it's fate, like it's magically appearing, or it's coincidence, or whatever else. And it's just the subconscious or not conscious being conscious. So it's my favorite by a long shot.
Well, you nailed it. So thank you. I know I put you on the spot with that one, but
Yeah.
but Darrell, just thanks in general for this. Thanks for being my friend. I appreciate that, just having you in my life. But thanks for being so willing to share your story with our listeners, because I know you're helping people. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks, Terry. Thanks for having me.